This episode is brought to you by our Patreon supporters. Become a patron today at patreon.com/into the portal. 219 BCE. The Chinese ship bobbed up and down in the soft rolling waves of the sea as alchemist Zhu Fu gazed out at the horizon. He had been selected because of his skills to find an elixir that he had now been looking for some time. His fleet had been sailing for months in search of a place thought to be the sole location of great unknown herbs and fruits, and knowledge of the immortals. Zhu's emperor was obsessed with immortality, and he believed that there was a great island, coveted in Chinese legend, that was home to gods that subsisted like that of mortal men. That they, like him, needed to consume food to maintain their power and strength. But what were they subsisting on? What was their secret? Zhu would sail for many months in search of this mystical place where 8 immortals were said to dwell. However, whether his ships found this place or not will never be known, as neither Zhu nor any other survivors of this journey would again return to China, lost for all eternity in search of eternal life. The search for an elixir of life is common across mythologies around the world and throughout history, with many stories claiming the type of extreme longevity found only amongst those between gods and men. However, some stories are more compelling than others. Allegedly born in 1677, the infamous Li Ching Yuen was one such extraordinary man, whose life quite possibly extended for over 250 years. His extreme longevity may be attributed to many simple things that quite possibly have roots in the legends of immortality found throughout the ancient East, and with links to the quests of numerous emperors of ancient China. Join us on Into the Portal for a different kind of mystery, as we discuss myths of eternal life, Eastern mythology, and of course, delve into the life and practices of the legendary Yi Ching Yuen, otherwise known as the Good Luck Man.
Hello, and welcome back into the portal. I'm Amber Ray.
And I'm Andrew McKay. Welcome back, everyone.
Yeah, it's brand new week, brand new story.
Yeah, a little different kind of direction a little bit this week.
Well, it's all weird, so it's not really.
Yeah, I guess. I feel like I say that all the time, but I guess it is all strange, bizarre stories. So,
well, we are your gateway to the bizarre. So
we are indeed. And we never say that. But we definitely are.
Yeah, we got to start using our own catchphrase.
I know, right?
Before we get into things, though, we do have a bit of minor housekeeping.
Some exciting new stuff.
Yeah. Well, we've had a couple new patrons join the crew.
Yes, we have.
Yeah.
Pretty stoked on that.
Yeah, we've got Mike A and Mike B. Sorry, I had to do that just because.
Yeah, it was funny how you typed it in there like that, but they literally, last names A and B. So, but I'm just going to say it. Mike Anderson, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And Mike, was it Mike Boyd?
Mike Boyd.
Awesome. Thank you so much, you guys. Happy to have you in that Patreon community.
Definitely.
Go check it out. The link's on our website, and
Yeah, we've got a brand new, we finally uploaded the September bonus episode.
We were kind of behind, but.
We were a little bit behind, but we are back on track.
We are indeed.
Yeah, and we've actually got a really cool one planned for October. Obviously, it's going to be Halloween themed, so look forward to that, guy.
Yeah.
And I don't know if anyone else has noticed on our Facebook, we announced we've got some new stickers and buttons on the way.
Pretty stoked on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So everyone that got that reference for that Fran Drescher thing, they're going to get a little goodie from the new stash, which is going to come probably this week in the mail if it's on time. So, yeah, look forward to that in the next little bit. it.
Definitely.
And yeah, okay, our other special announcement, Andrew, you want to?
Sure, yeah. So we had this fun idea. We just thought this would be really sweet to do because we are obviously obsessed with October. It's our favorite month of the year, and we're assuming for a lot of you listeners out there it is as well. And so we decided we really wanted to do an Into the Portal Halloween pumpkin carving contest.
Yeah.
Just because every year we get super into pumpkin carving. We buy like pumpkins throughout the month and just like carve them. They go rotten, and then we carve more closer to Halloween. But yeah, we really want to see what kind of skills you guys got. So we actually, we're gonna be accepting submissions right at the beginning of October, but we'll be running that all the way up to the 31st. So be sure to post on. So like get at us on social media, essentially, right?
Yeah. So the idea is you got to post a picture of your pumpkin. And it has to be something paranormal themed. Bonus points if it says Into the Portal on it, or if it's any of the themes, the topics that we've covered thus
like
far.
any of the monsters or anything like that.
Exactly. And then we'll actually be announcing a special hashtag that you have to use as well in order to be entered in the contest. And we will announce it at the end of each episode starting September 28th onward.
Yes.
So it'll be the same password every week. Or password. Hashtag.
Yeah,
password,
definitely.
Whatever.
And like we'll bring this up again, but we just wanted to like drop that early and at the
so you guys
towards the
can
end of September.
You can start thinking about it, mulling around, get your designs prepped up. You want to see it.
Totally. No, that's going to be really fun. And then, before we get started here, there was one other thing, or well, a couple other things, I guess. Thank you so much to the Pine Barrens Institute and Haley's Comet for your 5-star reviews on iTunes. Thank you so much. You guys rock. You're the best. And thank you to everyone else who's left us reviews as well. And if you don't have the time, you don't want to actually type up a review, you can just click the stars. Like Apple Podcasts, iTunes takes 1 second to do. We really appreciate it.
I will warn you though, people, I have in the past, I've gone to do that and I feel so terrible. I've accidentally hit it. Like it is weird. It's kind of glitchy sometimes, and it won't actually fill up the 5 stars. It'll go to like 2 or 3, and then it'll be like submitted, and you're like, no.
Oh like we have. I think I've mentioned this on an earlier episode, but my dad gave us like a 1-star review on the Canadian iTunes because he was using like his older phone, and oh man. Anyway,
so yeah, I've been guilty of it, and I don't feel bad.
Don't let that discourage you. Yeah.
If anything, just pile on the 5 stars if you accidentally do that.
Sweet.
Too.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
And one last thing. We just wanted to acknowledge that we totally forgot last week. Everyone would have noticed this. We uploaded for the very first time ever the unedited, raw, uncut Into the Portal audio file for the Beast episode. So we didn't have promos for our friends over at Kryptonaut Pod and Secret Transmission Podcast. So, but we will have the links. We have the links already from last week's episode, but we'll make sure that those are available. So shout out to those guys, those 2 shows. Really, really great shows. So go check them out. Again, Secret Transmission and Kryptonaut Podcast. So
I'm sorry, guys. That was my bad. I am the editor of this podcast.
It gets crazy busy this time of year. Amber and I work in the wine industry, and it's harvest. So
no excuse for that.
No, but it's busy. It's been a busy week. It's been crazy.
Well,
so shall we get right into it?
Let's do it.
All right. So
this week we are unveiling the secrets to eternal life. No, just kidding. But we are getting into it a little bit. We are talking about the story of Li Ching Yuen, and this is actually brought to us by a listener. This is Matthew. So thank you, Matthew. Yes. We appreciate that.
Yeah,
this
very
is
much.
A very cool story. And yeah, we're just going to dive right into it.
Okay.
So essentially, this was a man he was a Chinese man. His name is Li. He was born in the sort of a central landlocked province of Sichuan during the Qing Empire, spelled Qing.
Okay.
And yeah, it's kind of debated. He had a very long life.
That's an
by some accounts, almost 200 years. By other accounts, over 250 years.
Right.
So, very interesting man. So, like we said, he is born during this Qing Empire, which is actually one of the largest empires in world history. Right. 4th largest overall. It ruled China proper from 1644 to 1912 when they had their Reformation and they ended up becoming the Republic of China.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a pretty good run.
It's
a long time.
Yeah, it was preceded by the Ming Dynasty.
Right.
So that was the Great Age of Exploration and things like that. This era in Chinese history was characterized more by a turning in and a closing off of China. And very interesting time period. So Li obviously experienced all of it pretty much, like if you believe the stories.
Yeah.
But as a young child, Li was a bright learner. He was very gifted. He could read and write by the age of 10, which in today's society isn't that impressive, but back in the day, that's really impressive, especially because he was in a rural area. Like he wasn't royalty. He wasn't anyone special. He was just a Chinese man that was born into...
He was like born into like a family.
Well,
right?
exactly, yeah. And he was born into a family of herbalists.
Right. Okay.
And he had several elders that kind of propelled him along his way. So at an early age, he was being groomed and, prepared for his career, which he began at the age of 10, according to some sources. Others say about 13. But yeah, so he began to collect herbs in the Snow Mountain ranges in his home province of Sichuan. If I'm saying that right.
It's okay. There's going to be a million mispronounced things in this episode. It's all good.
But anyway, so while he began this career, he learned about these herbs and their potency for longevity.
Interesting.
Yes. And he ended up having, by the end of his life, he had like almost like, he kind of reminds me of the Chinese Jesus because he had like disciples. He had
People
his own,
following him.
Yeah,
Really?
exactly. He had his own little following, and they apparently too, this is according to, I don't even know how reputable this source was, but apparently one of his disciples said that Li had actually met a man who lived to be 500 years old. And so he kind of learned his secrets.
Interesting.
Which did revolve around these herbs. So for almost 40 years, that seems bizarre. That was according to one source, which again, there's lots of discrepancies in the information.
There is, yeah. Gets a little hairy.
But some people say it was 40 years. I would say it was probably his entire life that he was consuming these things. But anyways, he survived on a very minimalist diet.
Very much so.
So things like lindsay, goji berries, which people are probably familiar with because it's a superfood that's highly marketable today.
Yeah.
And all sorts of things. Ginseng and rice wine was another big one. We're going to go through all of these individually just for their purported health benefits and things like that. But yeah, no, Li, he was very interesting, much loved. He married a bunch of times. Like, according to one source, it was like 24 times. And he had over like 180 living relatives today. But he had like, it was just like his family tree was amazing.
Yeah,
like
just
apparently
massive.
he fathered alone like maybe over 200 kids.
200 kids.
Yeah. Pretty insane.
Dang.
Yeah.
Dang.
But it's funny because Li didn't have, like, he didn't really, he didn't claim to have anything extraordinary as far as a secret. All he said, this was his famous phrase, when asked to, like, reveal his secrets of longevity, his reply was, "Keep a quiet heart, sit like a tortoise, walk sprightly like a pigeon, and sleep like a dog."
That's an interesting philosophy.
Very simple. It reminds me of like yoga or something.
Totally.
You know, like,
Very, very, and it's, the simplicity is definitely something that would maybe throw people off because we're talking about, for the entire episode in its entirety, like elixirs of life. And obviously this guy didn't have the ego that goes along with like a search for something like that, so to speak. You know what I mean? Like, he had a modest upbringing. One of the accounts I saw of his, because you did a good job going through that there, one of the accounts I came across was that he was from a family that was maybe slightly beyond like just working class, but his father passed away when he was really young. And that's why around that age of 10 is when he learns to read and write and gets collecting these herbs and stuff, because he kind of had to like take it upon himself to make a living and to be the man of what his family, I guess. So
makes sense.
Resourceful guy.
There you go.
Indeed. So, I mean, like he had a lengthy life as an herbalist, like you just said. And there's some, like you said too, like there's a lot of, the records are scant. It's kind of it was kind of a closing off period of China. And not only that, like it's just kind of a long time ago. So a lot of things are difficult to kind of, to really... I don't know. It's too bad, right? Like, it's not the same as just being able to go on, like, Ancestry.com and pull up some Li documents, you know? And
it's funny, because, like, you guys listening might have noticed we haven't mentioned the date he was born. We'll get into that in a minute,
We will. Some even say that he did more than just kind of meditate and eat leaves, though, that he was actually a military tactical advisor and martial artist teacher for the provincial Chinese army.
Yeah. Well, he was super into the martial arts.
Yeah, like as a form of meditation, I guess, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. But also, obviously, they are meant to be used for
There
combat.
was one other thing I saw referenced where he was like a tactical sort of advisor as well for topography. So he knew the area, he knew the mountains, that type of thing, the natural sort of.
So, like, the one record says that he joined the army at the age of 51, which already seems like kind of an older age to be joining the military.
But if you're joining as an advisor, though, that's kind of a more senior position.
Makes a little more sense.
Yeah.
And then other records show that he joined at the age of 71. Now, these are sort of like, I'm air quoting for all you people out there listening, like the records are either people think they've been forged or they're basically, they can't be found.
Or being exaggerated.
Right. So
there were a couple books written about this guy and, the information. Yeah.
But it's kind of debated whether he joined the military at all or whether or not he was at that age. I mean, if you're joining at 71 and then exiting at 78, which is what the one report basically says, after fighting in the battle at the Golden River. Mm-hmm. So this is according to General Yang Sen, who basically, he was one of the earlier, or I guess not earlier because he would have been quite old at this time, but a disciple of Li. So he actually invited Li to visit his residence. This was later in the 1920s. So at this point, he would have been beyond his military career and into his meditation and his practices of life.
Well, the story, the narrative I kind of came across was that he basically was raised to be an herbalist. That was his profession. He definitely had more talents, though, and so that's how he ended up joining the military. He joined the military for over 20 years, according to most accounts that I saw. And then after that was when he retired back to being an herbalist and went back to Sichuan.
Back to the mountains.
Back to the snow mountains. And he just continued on his way, just collecting herbs and just meditating a lot.
So, but it's just so crazy to think that collecting herbs, mixing them up in your little, whatever way you have.
It was in like tinctures and stuff.
Yeah.
Because he did enjoy his rice wine.
There's an alchemy aspect to this, right? Ooh. Like that, you know what I mean? It reminds me of Gay Hong, who will actually come up in a little bit here.
Exactly.
But he obviously had tapped into some sort of knowledge of some kind, right?
Yes, or some sort of awareness, some sort of spirituality, something that comes from the inside is kind of the impression I got. Mm-hmm. It's very much a spiritual wholeness that resides within the individual. It's not something to seek out. It's something to sort of uncover within.
Right. Mm-hmm. And that's why Western society and our desperate attempts to find the keys to immortality, which you see every time you see Revitive triple laser cream commercials on TV, will never be attained because
it's always coveting something.
It's topical. It's all literally topical, like in the form of a cream, but literally just Band-Aid solutions. It's not getting to the root of the philosophy like you're talking about.
Well, exactly. And even just a large part of our society comes from, it is driven by just this instilled desires of things that we don't have, the need to covet things that we don't actually need, and then in a sense we're always unfulfilled. Right. And a large part of that has to do with our sort of modern capitalist economic setup and the way in which that's sort of been bred into us as people. Like, obviously, Lee's growing up in an entirely different time.
Totally.
And I feel like that is a factor in this whole thing.
Absolutely. Like, even the idea of living, say, to 200 years or 1,000 years or whatever, if you think about that from, like a Western perspective, it's almost like to beat the odds. Like, to be like, it's you against something. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't want to die at age 80. I want to live longer for me so I can experience more stuff. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's not so much just like, I might live to 250 because I'm existing a certain way. It's not a means to an end. No. You know what I mean? It's just a way of being.
Well, and the thing is, too, with our society conventional society as a whole, we live in perpetual fear of death too. We don't really see, like, sure, some people are practicing religious people and they do believe in an afterlife per se, but a lot of people don't. A lot of us are secular and we don't think there's anything past this material world. With Li, I feel like he had a more of like what we said, like a spiritual wholeness that kind of meant that eternity doesn't mean eternity in this flesh body. You know what I mean? It's something different.
Right. Tapped into some sort of other energy of some kind.
Exactly. Yeah, the life force. The chi.
The chi.
The
prana.
The prana, yeah.
We'll touch on that in a sec.
Exactly.
Y'all might remember that from the Tesla episode.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A Tesla's going to come up.
So I think it's about time that we went over just how old Li was.
Oh, Li. Okay. Well, there are, like we've said, there are some discrepancies. Some point to 1736 as his birth date. Others place the record at 1677. Yep. So this would make Li somewhere between 197 years old and 256 years old.
Dang.
So Li himself never actually purported to be as old as 256. He put his birth date at 1736, but there is research and evidence to the contrary. Yeah. There was this professor. He's the dean of the Department of Education at Minkyu University. His name is Wu Changqing. Okay. Qian? I don't know. Yeah. And he found records showing that Li was actually born in 1677. So, and this was from, like, the imperial records of China that praise him. This is, like, military records. After he had served for over 20 years in the military, obviously he was in their system, so to speak. And they gave him praise for his immense contributions to China, and they send him his best regards for his 150th birthday in 1827, and then they also sent him another congratulations in 1877 for his 200th birthday. 200! Isn't that insane?
And those are on record, like, those can be found. And so the argument is that some people think it's forged, right?
Some people think it's forged. There's obviously no birth record for Li himself.
Again, that would probably be if potentially someone would just argue that it's a forged document. Mm-hmm. It's tough to... Could you imagine how easy it would have been to forge documents back then? Back in the day?
But if you think about it from an anthropological standpoint, you would think that it might have been easy to make it look that way, but once you go back, it'd be like, oh wait, no, this paper is actually carbon dated to a certain date, and the material, this ink type, wasn't used during this time period, or things like that. Things like that,
yeah, no, for sure.
So perhaps, but maybe not, if you dig deep enough.
Well, I tell you what, people really did believe him, believe his story. They believed him at least for the fact that he was born in 1736, and there was some pretty major, there were some major people that believed that.
Oh, totally. I was just going to say, one thing to support Li and his claims is the fact that he never tried to, make money off this. No. He wasn't trying to sell these, the cure to non-aging. You know what I mean? He wasn't even really, he wasn't writing books or... He did have books written about him.
About him, yes, he did indeed. And actually, that's what I was just about to mention. Mm-hmm. So, he basically attracted the attention of a lot of kind of higher-up people. And I was going to just mention this a few minutes ago. But General Yang Sen, who was basically just a well-known military tactician, and he was he was
literally, I believe he was the commander-in-chief of the Imperial Army.
Yeah, he was the main dude.
Or sorry, the Republic at this point, because it's 1927.
Right. But no, he was up there. And he was, he was a commander of some kind. I can't remember the exact, obviously a general, but where the details of it. But it's the point is that he basically was a big supporter of Li, and he believed that this guy had the keys to not only just, modest longevity, but potentially the elixir of life. He invited Li to Wanxian, China. Hopefully that's even remotely close. To teach about health and longevity. So yeah, and at this time, Li would have been reported to be about 250 years old, or in and around this time.
Jeez.
So in the late 1920s.
You should see this guy's face. We'll post a picture. It's like he looks like a mummy.
Yeah. So and then his visit was kind of big news, because by this time in the 20s, you know, he was reportedly 250 plus. So this had definitely like gotten around, and people had been writing about him. And then later on, a full book was published. So in the 1970s, Yang Sen compiled a book of his accounts of Li and his teachings at that time. So he basically wrote down all of his tactics and like basically the ways he went about meditating and mixing his herbs. And this was translated into English in 1982, titled "The True Record of a 250-Year-Old Man." But according to, I mean, it's crazy, like you said earlier, according to one version of Li's married life, you mentioned it earlier, he buried 23 wives. Yeah, and
That's
was living
crazy.
with his 24th, a woman of around 60 years of age, during the time of his first interview with Yang Sen in the late 1920s. And then there's another account in 28 that credits him, like you said, over 180 living descendants. 11 generations.
Jinx.
Crazy. Recorded only, oh man. Some of them recorded less marriages. Like, oh, there's one record that he was only married 14 times. Well, yeah.
That's still a lot.
Yeah. How modest. How modest.
He's obviously got it going on. Li's keys.
Li's keys. We're moving on to Li's keys.
Moving on to Li's keys. Keys to longevity. Okay, Li definitely espoused meditation. He was confident that a calm state of mind and a series of breathing techniques could lead to lasting longevity. So it's all in your state of mind. And he was very dedicated. Practiced them every day, hours at a time. You know, and some people, you know, it's hilarious. People would look at that today and be like, that's a waste of time. I can't do that. I can't commit that much time. I you know what I mean? And we're just like, it's almost like, even for me, I'm like, I almost panic when I think, well, oh my gosh, spending 8 hours a day meditating. Like, I need to be productive. I need to be doing stuff, blah, blah, blah. But in the end, that's going to kill me.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's funny, actually, when I watched a little YouTube thing on Li, and literally like 90%, and we have a link for it, but like 90% of the comments on the video are like, lived for 250 years, like this guy didn't even live at all he did was eat leaves and meditate, like that's no way to live, and blah blah blah. And it's like all those comments, and it's like, okay, on the one hand it's like I get that, and I get the sort of comedic interpretation, because it is kind of like, did you really live?
Yeah.
But it's just it's a Western lens.
Oh,
right?
totally.
And it's what is life?
And what sort of material wealth can you accumulate to sort of prove to people that you've lived a life or something?
Yeah,
but
like the implication was very like MGMT message, where it's like, you know, live fast and die young, where it's like, but why is that living?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
that's not. And it's very interesting because things like meditation and specifically Qigong, which is what Li practiced. He practiced Qigong, and he also practiced Tai Chi.
Ooh, classic.
And it's interesting because there have been medical studies performed that do examine the psychological and physiological benefits of these types of practices. And it actually shows that there are significant benefits, such as decreasing your cortisol levels. So cortisol, that's a chemical hormone produced by the body in response to stress. Okay, so that's just one aspect of this whole thing. But it's very interesting because, like, Qigong, Tai Chi, the benefits come about from this sort of return to an equilibrium. It's a balance in the body.
Right.
And just creating that sort of balance and equilibrium can also create strength, flexibility, balance, and like it's all performed through, a combination of breathing and movement.
Right.
And flow. And like, it reminds me, it's just like, it's almost as if you're bringing your body back to a harmonious vibration. And that sounds very hippy-dippy when I say that, but it actually does. And there's been lots of studies that show that these sorts of postures and techniques and focused intentions, when you create that sort of awareness and that thing, that can actually open up new avenues of health, and even just like elimination of free radicals in your system and things like, we'll get into that more, especially related to his diet, because a lot of these superfoods that Li was eating definitely have been purported to maintain that and promote these sorts of things.
Yeah.
But very cool. So,
Well, let's talk about that a little bit then. Let's get into the diet.
yeah.
I'm interested because you pulled up most of this stuff. I mean, well, you can kind of just, you keep going.
Okay. So literally all Li ate was green leaves, berries, and ice wine, according to accounts.
Right,
like,
right.
I'm imagining, like, come on, man, you didn't enjoy one hamburger in your childhood. like that's not living. Let's go to Triple O's.
Seriously.
But anyways, oh, we forgot to mention that in our and for the Halloween thing, because like we're obviously gonna like for the pumpkin carving. Oh my gosh, I'm totally getting off topic, but I really want to talk about this just for a second. We're gonna try and source some exclusive Canadian Halloween treats as part of our prize package for this, which is definitely not going to be superfood related, and it's definitely not going to help you live longer. But we want to, for all of our American and Australian and UK fans, and we're as far as they reach, we just want to give you a unique little Canadian thing. So we'll have to try and try
that'll be the tasty part of the prize pack.
Exactly, and obviously some pin stickers, hopefully a mug, a pillow from ITP's official TeePublic store. And we'll have some secondary prizes too. But anyway, sorry. All right, Lee's Keys.
Back to Lee's Keys.
Back to Lee's Keys. So his diet. So
he just ate green leaves, berries, and rice wine.
Actually, that's kind of a lie here, because he did eat mushrooms as well, which were called reishi mushroom or lindsay.
Okay.
Lindsay. Anyways. Reishi is known as a common, like, immune boosting thing.
Good for your liver, lungs, and brain too.
So it's a kind of like all of these sort of sound very holistic.
Very
they
new
all
age
kind of like work together seemingly, but things like anti-aging benefits, these antioxidants, lots of blood sugar control. So this is specific to goji berries that I'm talking about now. So reishi mushroom, so immune boosting. Goji berries, antioxidants, preventing cancer, boosting energy levels, preventing unhealthy weight levels, things like that.
Okay.
Ginseng, obviously, like
everyone knows ginseng.
Ginseng knows it for its effects for energy and in energy drinks, but it can also have potential benefits against fighting cancer again. So this is all free radical based, right? Like a lot of cancers that develop in the bodies are a result of sort of a domino effect of these free radicals. But anyways, I'm going to get that in a second, because I've got this whole list of lovely things here. Andrew's just like, he looked at this before we started recording. He's like, so, you got a big laundry list here of stuff to go through for his time. I'm like, we're not going to go through every single one, but just so people get the gist of it. I feel like you could
what he was consuming. I think it's important, because I'm going to try to tie all of this into the legends and lore of the immortals.
There you go. So it's all very relevant. So ginseng, again, may reduce inflammation, potential antioxidant, increases brain function. This is a good one here. Could improve erectile dysfunction. Obviously, Lee did not have any problems in that.
She clearly did not.
So, this is another interesting one here. So Lee actually was known to consume a lot of heishu wu, which I'm assuming is a type of berry. And again, this fights inflammation, maintains liver health, heart health, supports longevity and anti-aging, clearing up brain fog. So what I hear when I see something like that, like clearing up brain fog, I'm hearing synapse repairs in your brain. So like literal electric connections that form between different neurons in your brain, the things that fire that actually make you think and form connections. That's what that's doing. It's enhancing that. It's remyelinating those connections. So a myelinated cell, like the connection the neuron snaps, that's basically the lubrication. So the ability for those neurons to fire properly. And then obviously, we got rice wine as well.
This is the most important one, because this was
kind of the medium.
Was his, he got to enjoy some rice wine.
Yeah.
I'm assuming the alcohol level was quite low ABV.
I wonder. Well, a little bit of ABV helps anyone out.
Yeah. Clears you out, kills some bacteria.
It does, yeah. It's an antibacterial substance. It can reduce the size of cancerous tumors and free radicals that cause cancer. So we're getting all of this again, like free radicals, like this all comes down to this stuff. Boosting immunity and your metabolism, reducing inflammation, promoting blood circulation, all this stuff. Again, with gotu kola, which was another thing that he was known to eat. Again, like, it's used to fight fatigue, anxiety, depression, Alzheimer's disease. So again, brain health,
memory improvement, yeah,
memory, intelligence. It can, circulation problems. It's so funny. It's like this laundry list. I feel like we're on like an episode of Dr. Oz or something.
Yeah, I feel like the show has shifted now.
But another huge thing. So all of these are what we would term superfoods in the Western world.
Yes.
And superfoods have this thing in them it's called phytochemicals. Right, phytochemicals is kind of like, it's been like reported as like sort of this miraculous cure for everything or whatever. But it's really kind of weird. It's not what you would think. So according to how stuff works, phytochemicals are actually natural compounds found in fruits and vegetables. But they are substances that don't fall within any other category. So they're not vitamins, proteins, carbohydrates, fats, or minerals. And so they're not nutrients. That is, so they're not necessary for sustaining life. But they are beneficial to our health.
Huh.
And each type of fruit and vegetable could contain hundreds of these phytochemicals. So, for example, an orange could contain up to 170 different phytochemicals.
Crazy.
Yeah, and so where the hell do these phytochemicals come from? So they're obviously sourced from these plants, and it was a evolutionary sort of tactic for plants. And what I read, this is again from howstuffworks.com, so basically when the Earth was young, there was a very different composition of gases in the air. So there's a lot less oxygen, a lot more carbon dioxide.
Okay.
As plants developed and began to flourish, they started converting that carbon dioxide into oxygen. Plants don't do well with oxygen, though. It's kind of a hostile environment for them. They need carbon dioxide to actually sustain themselves and grow. So what they started to do, they formed these compounds that were actually phytochemicals that are antioxidant.
To protect themselves.
Exactly, to protect themselves. And so, yeah, as the world became a more oxygen-rich environment, they created more and more and more as an evolutionary response. And today, it's interesting, plants would not be able to survive in our world with the amount of oxygen around if they didn't have these.
Crazy.
So it's kind of this weird thing, but phytochemicals, so they ultimately protect plants and those who choose to consume them, so vegetarians and all of us, whatever, have salad once in a while, they protect plants from free radicals.
Interesting.
Yeah. So even though these mechanisms are very unclear to researchers, it's very murky business. But essentially, free radicals are dangerous because they do result in cancerous cell formations. So basically what happens, how free radicals are formed in the body is when you get bad bonds between cells and molecules that form cells. So if there is a molecule with an unpaired electron, so an odd man out, so to speak, that electron is going to just sort of be a free radical and start causing chaos and start breaking up other molecules in order to gain their electron.
Gotcha.
And it's a domino effect between all these. And then basically what it could do, it creates this very unstable environment. And it starts reacting with other compounds in order to gain that stability. So basically, it's just, it's a chain reaction. Once the process starts, it can cascade, resulting in the disruption of a living cell or a living organism, like a person. Yeah. So that's how you get these different types of cancers forming and stuff. But it's very interesting. So I feel like if you do have a higher level of metaphysical understanding of yourself and the body, and you're able to sort of make those repairs and sort of create that harmonious environment from within. Right.
Well, that's the thing. It's like you're consuming...
Through diet and through exercise and meditation.
You're consuming the right diet, and then the meditation is the centering and allowing the compounds of what you're consuming to actually like go to the spots they need to go, or whatever. I mean, that is kind of like the idea of yoga and of those types of things. Right?
And it's sort of funny. Like I have this like weird sort of like metaphor of like almost like... We have at our work, we have what we call a motion generator. We call it the shaker table, and it basically sorts everything out to where it needs to be, like in our apple press room. So the juice gets sorted into one area, all the particles of apple get like mixed and shuffled and vibrated into a nice, neat little pile. And so it's just like, to me, like I almost see that as like your body is one big shaker table, and you're just like trying to shift everything back to where it needs to. Exactly.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's a weird, very weird.
It's kind of a strange metaphor, or analogy, but I like it though.
Yeah.
Because it does sort of seem like that. And obviously Li had some sort of, and I think it matters too, like this is the thing though, because this is also new age, right? Like nowadays, especially looking at it from our lens. And basically to say like, oh, you know, ginseng, goji berries, like all these types of things, like you consume these things and you'll be healthier. But it's about,
in our society, no.
But it's about the
whole package.
The whole package. The preparation, the timing of consumption, when it's picked. Right?
Your state of mind.
Your state of mind, where you are. Like where you're physically located. All these things matter. It's about more than just the body itself. Yeah. But I mean, what's interesting
That's
about
interesting
all this,
actually you say that, because internality versus externality, what is more important as a factor, who you are internally or the environment you reside within.
Right. Exactly.
Sorry, I kind of
No, not at all. No, totally. That is kind of the question of this entire episode, really.
Yeah.
In a way. Now, what I wanted to try to do, because I found this all to be, I mean, exactly what I expected in terms of like, okay, well, what did this guy consume to live to be 256 years old, potentially? But I feel like it's not just about, I mean, this is all tied into ancient searches for these things. So it's like, it got me thinking, it's like, okay, well, did a Chinese emperor from 2,000 years ago, was he looking for goji berries? You know what I mean? Was he looking for an herb that wasn't as readily available, that was purported to be one of these everlasting life-giving like plants, you know what I mean? That have, you know, later on been harvested by people like Li, like in the mountains. That was kind of, it got me thinking about that. But this quest for eternal life, the elixir of life, the philosopher's stone, is ubiquitous around the world, obviously, but it's been a part of Chinese mythology for a very, very long time. So dating all the way back to the first emperor of China, Lingzeng. So, well, the first emperor of unified China.
Okay.
So he basically was obsessed with searching for the elixir of life. This was basically, it was paramount for his rule. He consumed himself with it. He was born in 259 BCE, and he declared himself renamed essentially as Qin Shi Huang, or the first emperor of the Qin dynasty in around the age of 38 years old. And he wanted to be sure that he lived long enough to basically fulfill his proclamation that he would survive for 10,000 generations of his rule.
Who said that?
He did.
Oh, okay.
So it's like, and he wanted to like live up to that. Okay. He wanted to see it through. Now, there was kind of an interesting thing discovered. This was just a little while ago. It was in the early 2000s. There were 2,000-year-old texts that were found that were dated to this emperor's rule. And they were found at a site that was actually a little bit older, but the texts themselves were perfectly dated to his reign. And they basically talked about his search. So the documents in question were found, it was a cache of about 36,000 wooden strips, which is essentially what they used for writing, right?
Wow.
For ancient calligraphy. And these were found...
paper, man.
Yeah, seriously. And that's why it was preserved so well, too, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like, super durable.
Huge difference, yeah.
And they were found in an abandoned well out in the country in the Hunan province, like super, super remote. How cool is that? Like you found like these ancient texts hidden down a well.
In the county of Hunan. I wonder how close that is to the Chinese capital. What would have been the capital back then? I feel like it changed.
I don't even think there would have been a distinct capital at that time. Would have been a few different places probably. But anyway, they indicated he sent out a search for such a potion, or at least sent out a search for the knowledge of such a potion. And essentially these strips contained an executive order demanding that his subjects search for the immortality elixir to keep him alive forever. And according to the researchers from the BBC, his writings expressed, quote, an assorted awkward replies from regional governments who failed to find the key to eternal life for the emperor. So it's basically just like he was dead serious about it, and this was just like the correspondence back and forth and them being like, we can't find this. Although there were officials in one area of Langya, I don't know exactly where that is, we can Google it though, who did suggest that there was an herb from a local mountain that might do the trick. Now,
interesting.
Where exactly was this mountain?
Maybe it was the Snow Mountains.
What mountain are you talking about? Yeah, what mountain are you talking about? What herb is this? What are you talking about?
I'm currently looking up the map here.
Okay.
Ooh, that's a really pretty mountain.
So.
Whoa. Look at that.
Oh, Oh, cool.
We need to go to China.
That'd be cool. We need some more money. we need some more Patreon.
We need to GoFundMe.
GoFundMe, yeah, for a China trip. That would be cool, actually. Do like a myths voyage.
Oh, it's pretty far north from where Li was.
Okay.
Li was more like in the south.
So
central.
literally, this emperor had.
This is by Beijing.
He had people all over the entire country scouring for the potential ingredients for an elixir of life. Then, but what this kind of like sparked for me was it reminded me of this legend in Chinese and Japanese mythology of a great mountain hidden in the sea. An island that's basically just like a massive mountain coming out of the water, and nobody knows exactly where it is. It's a mythical place. And in Chinese mythology,
Atlantis.
very much so. In Chinese mythology, it's called Mount Penglai. In Japan, I can't remember exactly what it's called. I had it written down here, I thought, but now I can't see it. But anyway, it's called Mount Penglai. But this kind of got me thinking. It's like, okay, well, is this what the emperor from 2,000 years ago was trying to find? Was it specifically this mountain, or is this possibly where some of these herbs and things came from? Like, I don't know the history of the goji berry and its movement throughout history. It would have potentially come from a different place, but this would have been hundreds of thousands of years ago.
Well, that's interesting. You'd have to look at the timeline of when this sort of Mount Penglai mythology came about versus when this guy was ruling.
Right. But what's interesting about this Mount Penglai, though, and how this kind of ties into this, is that it's sort of, okay, first of all, it's rarely mentioned in any mythologies having to do with eternal life or anything like this in any religion or any ancient text or whatever. It's usually, they don't mention that the gods themselves are consuming things. It's usually just like they're immortals, but that doesn't go that much further than that, other than the fact that, like, if we think of like the forbidden fruit from like the Garden of Eden,
or in
like
what
things
was that,
like that
in Greek mythology where there was that horn?
Yeah.
You drink from the horn of some sort of mythical goat or something, and then gives you.
There's all kinds of stuff like that. But essentially, it's like, it's usually something special. Like you just said, like from the horn of a goat or like whatever. It's not just like...
From this one goat god thing, I think, or something. It was... Yeah.
But on Mount Penglai, this was supposedly the location where 8 immortals lived. And they needed to eat food, like regular... Not regular food like a normal mortal would eat, but they needed to consume in the same manner as a mortal in order to maintain their power and strength. And so... Yeah, many references are refer to this, these gods, and that people have been trying to find this island for thousands of years in order to bring back these plants, these herbs and these fruits.
Interesting. So
that's my question. It's like, did anyone find this and bring something back and plant it and it sort of spread?
Yeah.
I don't even know. It's just an interesting thought.
That is very interesting. So, okay, wait. So how specific are they on what this, like, life force food was?
Well, that's just it, though. It's kind of, yeah. So, okay. So the story goes that this emperor hired this alchemist named Zhu Fu. And he was like a magician / alchemist. So basically an interchangeable title back in the day, obviously. And
that reminds me of Li from our Chinese Explorers episode where it's like in the 400s BC.
Yeah.
And he was another magician.
They were all magicians back in the day, apparently.
If you could do something crazy, you're a magician.
Yeah, seriously. But yeah, no, Emperor Qin Shi Huang, he entrusted Zhu Fu with the task of finding the secret of immortality and basically searching for the mountain. And so in 219 BC, he was sent out, allegedly, the story goes, with 3,000 virgin boys and girls as essentially like an offering for the elixir.
Was it an offering, or was it more just like evidence that they were worthy?
Yeah, one of the two, either or, I guess. I mean,
be like, look how pure we are, look how good we are.
Right.
We deserve this. Yeah. Standards.
So it was a fleet of ships, a fleet of like chunks, I guess. Right.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah. So he was supposed to retrieve this elixir from Penglai Mountain, but apparently they never returned. They went out months and months and months and just never came back to China. Yeah.
They just disappeared.
Yeah. Just outright vanished.
Maybe the Kraken got them or something.
So he never ended up with his elixir of life. But I just thought that was such a cool legend, like the idea of this like mythical mountain just protruding from the sea, and it's like really hard to find. I don't really know.
That totally reminds me of, like, yeah, when we talked about the ancient Chinese explorers, and there was the story of that one guy who... Again, right? Remember, he apparently went on one mission, came back with this story of like these magical like raging rivers and mountains and just this beautiful rugged landscape. And then he basically told the emperor that he needed, I can't remember how many X amount of people and X amount of ships and supplies to go back and sort of tempt them so they could give, like, you know, do an exchange of sorts. And it just never took place.
Just never happened.
He never came back.
Yeah.
So maybe this is the exact same story.
It might be. Like, there is one version of the legend where he does return, although most of them basically said that he doesn't.
Okay.
Apparently, I just found my other section in the notes here. So, according to the classics of mountains and seas, the mountain is said to be on an island, right, like we said, in the eastern end of the Bohai Sea. So this is just in and around China, what would be now South China Sea. Along with 4 other islands, all of which could be the inhabitants of the hiding place of the 8 immortals, but they were known to inhabit this one main mountain, Penglai. Yeah. So, yeah, inhabited by godlike beings. It's described as a paradise, no pain, hunger, disease, because of the foods that they're eating. So it was able to heal their diseases as well and grant eternal youth. Yeah.
So that does sound like a lot of these ingredients and foods that I just listed off.
It really does. That's what I found to be so interesting, right? And you just made the joke about the sea creature. Well, in the one version of the legend, Xufu does return, although he claims that he wasn't able to get the elixir because a giant sea creature blocked his path. And so he actually was asking the emperor for archers in order to kill the creature to gain access to the mountain.
Interesting.
But that's definitely sounding more mythological than
Oh, here. Sorry, I'm just going through the notes again. Yeah, I remember the classic Chinese account of Fu Sang, which was another sort of magical land 20,000 Chinese miles away from the Great Han country, so the Middle Kingdom, which was China.
Right.
And this is just it. Yeah, it describes the Fu Sang trees with leaves the color of oak and red pearl berries.
Okay.
Yeah.
Crazy. See,
but
there's elements
this is a whole people, too.
See, but there's elements of this, too, that tie into that episode. Like the idea that how far did people venture in search for the elixirs for these ancient emperors, right? And if they did go far enough, you know, to make it, say, potentially to North America, for example, did the combination of ingredients there with other things found, say, on a place that is a mythical place like a Mount Penglai and brought back? You know, this is ancient knowledge that is now lost, is basically what I'm trying to say.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
And could have been reinterpreted, reimagined, different texts and things that are kind of like scattered to the winds and all that, yeah.
Now, of course, this legend of Xu Fu and taking the 3,000, or, well, there's debate about how many children it was, virgin boys and girls, but there's some evidence that it might actually have some basis in truth. Like, it isn't just a story. So there was a massive burial complex that was discovered in South China, and this was relatively recently. The site itself is Neolithic, so dating around 10,000 years ago, but they found tombs dating to the same period as Xu Fu's supposed voyage, so just over 2,000 years old. All of these tombs contained urn-type burials of children, sacrificial.
Oh, Lord.
So
how were they killed?
They weren't like brutally slaughtered or anything. They must have either been poisoned or I don't even know, suffocated, I guess. They were actually disassembled though to like fit in different pots. So there were different parts of them in different pots, but in their own individual burial locations.
Interesting.
But all in this one kind of mass grave.
Sorry, how many children?
There were over 2,000.
What?
Yep. Over 2,000.
Over 2,000 or over 2,000 years old?
Maybe I'm just well, okay, I have some pictures of it, and we have the link, actually, but, I mean, there definitely wasn't the 3,000. That was the claimed number, obviously, of the voyage. But it was just interesting because an archaeologist from Shanghai University, Li Yun, believed that this could be the resting place of those children, potentially linked to that story. So, yeah, the skulls and the feet of the children were removed and placed in smaller urns. Yeah.
So it would have been a sacrifice. It wouldn't have been look at how pure we are. We deserve this elixir. Please give it to us and we'll be on our way.
Yeah,
So not really like that.
No, it's a kind of a different version of the story, but it does potentially tie to it.
Okay, wait, so sorry, you said that the actual site itself dates back 10,000 years old to the Neolithic era, but these tombs themselves are believed to be just over 200 or 2,000 years old.
Yeah, so the site itself was like inhabited by Neolithic peoples.
So that does date to the correct time period for this first emperor that was looking for this elixir.
Yeah, which is kind of neat.
That is very cool.
Yeah. It's very coincidental, right?
Mind-blowing, really. That's...
Yeah. And this Zhu Fu and all this search for eternal life in, predating Christ, essentially, in the BCE is basically was the prelude for later alchemists, like guys we've talked about before, like Ge Hong.
Yeah, and Ge Hong, he's definitely relevant in this conversation. He comes up about 400 years later. We did touch on him really briefly in our Alchemist episode with Travis. That was like the homunculus one, episode 3.
Yes, yeah, that's right.
Of episode 3.
Episode 3.
But yeah, no, so this guy, he was an alchemist. He was a philosopher. He's been credited. He was the guy that came up with...
tinfoil.
Yeah, tinfoil or metal paper.
Yeah.
This amazing feat.
Yeah.
Very cool. He was definitely very hell-bent on creating, like the classic alchemist thing where they're trying to convert other substances into gold.
Turning lead into gold or turning, whatever.
Exactly. And so just a bit about him, like his biography. He was born in approximately in 283 CE in Giron. So, he was the youngest of 3 sons. He was a bit of an odd child. He didn't really participate in a lot of the activities with other kids and games and things like that. He was kind of in his own little world.
Yeah.
And then by the age of 14, he had entered into the tutelage of Zheng Ying, which was an accomplished classical scholar who turned to esoteric studies later in life. So esoteric's a little bit off the mainstream.
Yes, indeed it is. But that's our style.
Interestingly, Ge Hong was pretty obsessed with immortality as well. Like a lot of alchemists, they were looking for these elixirs of life again. And he actually did believe that anyone, through great effort and study, could achieve immortality.
Right.
We're not saying material immortality, but perhaps other forms.
It's like, what did he mean? We don't exactly know. The philosophy's different.
Exactly.
You got to wonder if he was contracted by someone to find it. Kind of like
I wonder.
The emperor, was forcing people to 600 years before him or whatever, 400 plus years.
Yeah, very cool though. Like he, again, like Li Ching Yuen, he believed in basics.
Yeah.
Basics, man. Like, in fact, like he actually said, like, if you were rich and powerful, this is actually a
detriment.
It is a detriment. Yeah, that's what I was trying to say. A detriment. Yeah. So it gets in the way. It's a distraction.
Yeah.
It's harmful. Wealth and position, because they inhibit one from attaining the necessary moral and physical serenity. It's kind of interesting. The less you have, the more you have, really, if you think about it. But essentially, he believed that he had a really interesting philosophy. He believed in this sort of metaphysical oneness. He called it the Zhuang. Yeah. I don't even know if I'm saying that right. It's Xuan, which basically he terms this as the mystery. Mm-hmm. So it's almost like, it's very similar to the Tao, like the way, or the Yi, which would be like the one, unity, that type of thing.
Yeah.
But basically, he believed that this creates and animates all things. So it's kind of like the life force, or prana.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And, okay, this is very interesting. So this is a quote from Ge Hong.
Yes, it is.
Describing the mystery, or the Zhuang. So, the Zhuang carries with it the embryo of the original one. It forms and shapes the two principles, yin and yang. It exhales and absorbs the great Genesis. It inspires and transforms the multitude of species. It makes constellations go round. It shapes the primordial darkness. It guides the wonderful mainspring of the universe. And it exhales, the 4 seasons. If one adds to it, it does not increase. If one takes away from it, it does not grow less. If something is given to it, it is not increased in glory. If something is taken from it, it does not suffer. Where the mystery is present, joy is infinite. Where the mystery has departed, efficacy is exhausted, and the spirit disappears. So that's deep, man.
That's profound stuff.
That's very interesting. That does bring to mind Tesla when he's talking about the life force and the prana.
Yeah.
The idea of like an essence of all things.
Yeah. And this is what and that's just that, like the part that I find most interesting here is just this bit where it's like if one adds to it, it does not increase, right? If one takes away from it, it does not grow less. Those things, that ties into like what I was saying before, like with our like kind of Western philosophy of trying to do things to either like to beat the odds, to compound something, to have an effect on something else. You know what I mean? This is a different way of thinking about something.
It really
nothing is affected. You know what I mean? Like nothing we do matters. Is I guess is the point of this.
That's almost very exhilarating to think about, right? And very freeing.
Very freeing. Yeah.
You're not like a prison of your own decisions and actions. It's like there's something beyond that.
Yeah.
That sort of can come about and I don't even know, like create your reality in a way that you can't create for yourself. And if you just sit back, take a step back from the driver's seat and just experience what's going on around you, it's just it's a different life altogether.
Yeah. Totally.
I love the idea that our perception ultimately informs our reality. If we change our perception, we change our reality, and it all comes from within. It's not from without.
Yeah. That's an important thing to acknowledge. I feel like I struggle with that a lot.
Yeah. We both need to take some of Lee's keys and apply them to our own lives.
Yeah.
Like, actually, I definitely want to enjoy more meditation and get more into that sort of practice and breathing. Just simple breathing.
Definitely.
A lot of people say, like, if you include just a few minutes every morning of just Qigong, where you're basically just like your posture, you can do it sitting down or standing up, whatever's more comfortable. You create this posture, you create this sort of this breathing rhythm, and you just kind of like do a little bit of a flow. It reminds me, just like yoga flow, where you're just kind of doing your thing.
Yeah.
But actually, if you do that right in the morning, right when you wake up, before you have coffee, before you have your meal, your breakfast, anything, that can create a huge difference in your overall mentality, carries with you for the rest of your day. And if you get away from it, then maybe you can have your own little like mental safe spot where you just come back and just recenter. Like, even just that idea of recentering. Like, people, I feel like it's so weird. I feel like I don't even have a center. I need to like find it. And then
Too busy to have a center.
Right? And that's a product of our lives and our society and culture.
These concepts we're talking about right now, this is bringing me back to Tesla, because we talked about this a little bit. Did you want to touch on that? Or do you want to save that for the end?
Tesla. Well, I did have some notes on Tesla a little bit. Tesla was an interesting character. He actually purposely shocked himself in order to sort of create synapses changes and just, I don't even know, like chemical changes, physiochemical changes in his brain and his mentality. At one point, he was quoted as saying, "Everything is spinning, everywhere is energy," which I would kind of attribute to his sort of Eastern philosophy influences.
Yeah.
And specifically those of Swami Vivekananda.
Right.
Yeah.
And the idea of the prana.
The idea of the prana. Life force is energy.
Right.
And energy can be harnessed in each individual. We saw that the Prestige with Bowie.
Yeah.
And how he basically, like, he did that example where you hold the light bulb and it turns on because you have the energy within you.
Right.
I thought that was really cool.
It's a good little metaphor for that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and it goes obviously far beyond that and far beyond our comprehension.
Yeah. Even the idea that we're all like battery cells. It's all cool though. So
I guess, to tie this in, not that it's disconnected really, but to tie this into the theme of the episode, it's like, how does this translate into being able to live for hundreds of years or potentially reach complete immortality? Right. So, there's been some crazy age claims over the centuries, over the millennium.
Very true.
And nowadays people take age validation really, really seriously. So it's all looked into, right? And it can be validated. So looking at consistency between birth, death, marriage records, whether names have been changed, like the ideal validation procedure includes like a complete family reconstruction, which is quite easy to do nowadays, right? Mm-hmm. Looking at the timing of the composition of the actual birth certificates and all the documents and all this kind of stuff. Of course, you couldn't do that back in the day because we have an infinite number of ancient, and a lot of them are biblical, extreme longevity claims that are really just quite interesting. So I thought I'd throw out a few here. And one of them, we're bringing up good old Herodotty again. Because, literally for thousands of years, people have been searching for the elixir of life. Greek historian Herodotus, none other than the man, the myth, classic, good old Herodotus. He wrote of, I actually think we might have mentioned this in our first ever episode, but he wrote of a fountain somewhere in modern day Ethiopia that supposedly restored people to their former youth.
Fountain of youth.
Right? Bathed in its waters. And, it's kind of some serious... that's some serious fountain of youth stuff right there.
Totally.
Then, of course, you've got Old Testament reckonings, and they're sort of classic. People with living for a really long time. For example, the biblical patriarch. Oh my gosh, how do you pronounce this guy's name? The grandfather of Noah, like Noah's Ark, Noah. Methuselah. So his alleged age was somewhere between 720 and 969 years old.
Whoa.
Giggity, giggity. These themes are not uncommon, obviously, in, across ancient texts, biblical texts, things like that. Mm-hmm. So who out there listening thinks that Noah's grandfather lived to be 969 years old? You know what I mean? And then as we come through the millennium and the centuries, there's just more and more and more, and it kind of gets hard to tell. So there was a person in Japan, Mitsu Tara, believed to be 240 years old during the Tang Dynasty. There's too many to keep.
There's a lot. I came across a few too. And there's also, so if you even just Wikipedia longevity claims, you'll come across all of this information. But it's interesting. They actually have a term for a person that's super, super old. They call them a super centenarian. Yeah. So someone that's lived longer than 110 years old. Right. Exactly. But I came across a few. There was this one French woman who was actually the confirmed oldest person that's ever lived. Confirmed as, But anyways, her name was Jean Clement. And she was French. She came from a long-living family, even though there is no particular explanation. She basically lived a very comfortable and stress-free life. I feel like stress-free is a big
That's the
part
key.
of this as well.
Definitely.
She did have a healthy appetite, and she also had a daily exercise routine, and she was able to walk around without a stick until the age of 114 years old, according to Wikipedia. And so that's very interesting. And she is confirmed to have died at the age of 122.
That's old.
Yes. There was another man I came across. This was actually kind of funny. Well, not funny, but there was like a little spin that I thought was funny. But, he was Russian. His name was Shirali Muslimov. And he he wasn't actually Russian, but he was an Azerbaijani.
From
Azerbaijan. He was a shepherd. He lived in a village, a very mountainous area near the Iranian border. And he basically claimed to be the oldest person who ever lived. And when he died in 1973, he was allegedly the age of 168. Crazy. So that would place him about 46 years older than Jean Clement. But it says here that Muslimov worked hard every day up to 167 years old. He didn't smoke or drink. He ate a lot of fruits, vegetables, wholemeal bread, chicken broth, low-fat cheese, and yogurt. But the funny part was that his story was really picked up by Nat Geo and Danone. Like the yogurt company.
The yogurt company.
Because they wanted to attribute his longevity to the yogurt.
Of course they did.
So that was kind of funny.
Eat more yogurt.
This guy had several wives throughout his lifetime. But unfortunately, he did die of pneumonia. So there was no birth record, but if he is as old as he says he is, then he would be older than Jean Clement. And I don't know, maybe he does have some reason to sort of make these claims and want to be that person, but if you're just a rural shepherding guy, like, I feel like, come on, like, I don't know, maybe he's trying to sell a book. Who knows? It was the 70s, so there was a big resurgence of these types of claims in the 70s onward. It was just exactly what we said, New Age.
And it wasn't just New Age stuff, and it was through this region, like the Caucasus and Soviet Russia, also, and just a few other obscure places, like the Hunza Valley in Pakistan and the Vilcabamba Valley in Ecuador. There was a bunch of crazy longevity claims coming out of these.
And I'm sure there's tons that we've never even heard of, and they just live in their little they live their isolated lives, and they live them for a long time, and they like, I'm even wondering too, like, we covered the North Sentinelese people. I wonder what their sort of
how long some of them
average
before. Yeah, no kidding. Hey,
you have to wonder.
No way to know, but
they're only eating fish and whatever sort of plants.
Fish, turtles, and whatever kind of plants they got on that island. But interesting.
Probably no super berries though.
I'm thinking no super berries.
But maybe they do. Maybe there's a secret stash.
There's this one berry bush in the middle of the island, and then you're just like living off of it.
One berry bush.
It's like the guy from Life of Brian. He just like doesn't talk for 30 years, and he's like living off juniper berries. Oh dear.
Gosh.
Well, we're sort of migrating into the discussion here, just to wrap it up. It's hard. There's not really a theories section, so to speak, because this was kind of a bit of a different episode. We just thought it was fascinating, though. I mean, do we believe that Li Ching Yuen lived to be 256 years old?
From the photo I saw, yes, I believe it. He looks like he's 500 years old. He doesn't look. But another interesting part about Li that we didn't actually list was his height. He was tall. Like, he was over 7 feet tall. Yeah. Like 7'1" or 7'3".
7'1", just over that, something like that.
Which is interesting because generally speaking, when you have an increased body mass and density, like bone density, you're going to have a lot more health problems. Yeah. But these super berries and things that he's eating actually increase bone density as well. A proven thing of Tai Chi and Qigong, like the breathing and all that and the movements, they actually increase your bone density as well. So maybe he wouldn't have had issues. I'm thinking like osteoporosis, all this kind of stuff. Like, you got a lot of weight, gravity's, you know, like obviously he didn't have the problem of having a big chest because he wasn't a woman. So that's a big thing.
Right. No back pressure.
No. Yeah. But even despite that, like, there's definitely a lot of health complications. And we've seen people with, what's it called, like gigantism, and they die at a very early age because of these complications. Yeah.
Well, it's hard to do anything. Yeah. Like, this is going to sound like a silly example, but I always think of when we talk about, anything, people that are really big, I always think of Yao Ming, former NBA All-Star. He was 7'6", but his career was cut really short because he was just way too big. He had foot injuries that just would never heal because he was too big.
But maybe being in a high altitude environment like the Snow Mountains would improve that.
Possibly.
For someone.
Possibly.
I'm thinking of the Denver Nuggets now.
2 NBA references. Look at that. We're basketball fans, if in case anybody hasn't noticed. Mm-hmm. You want to do a plug for your new basketball podcast? I'm planning on releasing a basketball podcast. I don't really have a name or anything really set up for it, but stay tuned for that. I'll let you guys know. Call it Northern Hoops. I'm thinking about calling it Northern Hoops Podcast. Kind of a Canadian perspective on the NBA and just basketball in general, and some like recap stuff, fun stuff. Go Raps. Yeah, go Raptors. Anyway, you guys can let us know what you think about that. Paranormal and... But I'm going to say, honestly, like, the fact... I think that he was somewhere in between. I feel like he definitely outlived the 122 years of the French lady. I don't know if 256 he reached it. But it's like, I believe in all kinds of crazy things like that we talk about on this show, and I'm always bringing up interdimensional theories and all kinds of wild things that I have no evidence for at all, really. But I feel like with this, it's like you look at something, there's evidence for things that can make you live longer, things that can be, you know, worked into your life, meditation, and then eating to go along with that. Yeah. It's like those are physical things we can look at, and then it's really just a matter of whether you believe the records or not. You know what I mean? Very like true. Whether it's not the same as like, you know, oh, we had video of an alien, but now it's not on the video. So I don't know if it's true or not. And it's not as if we haven't heard of this before. There is another very famous case, Count of Saint Germain. Oh that we have not brought up. We have not brought that up. No. And again, very murky records, but people of notoriety and people high up in aristocratic courts and everything all across Europe claim to have seen this man. Right. The only thing is, like, are they actually seeing the same man? Yeah. Or what a very clever ruse. Well, exactly, yeah. And that's the other thing about this guy. That's one of the theories about Li, that this is really just a matter of there's been multiple generations under the same name, And he's produced offspring that have also all been 7 feet tall and look like him, obviously.
So maybe,
and this has just been passed through the generations, and it's essentially being attributed to the same man, but it's potentially 3 different men,
but they're all the same name,
of the same lineage and the same thing. That's a possibility, but it's also something that would be really. I mean, there's so much intent behind that, though. It's like, why would you put on that ruse?
If you think about it, though, maybe it's not so much a ruse, but it is sort of like a genuine belief in rebirth to a certain extent.
Okay, yeah. That's another way of thinking it too.
He is Li Ching Yuen. He's just the next phase of Li Ching Yuen.
It's very much like Buddhist philosophy.
It is, yeah. That's what I'm trying to.
Yeah,
because. Like the Tao, all these things we've talked about with Qigong and Tai Chi, like those are all related to practices in different sort of Eastern philosophies. Things like Buddhism, Taoism, and I can't remember the other one.
Tao.
Confucianism.
Oh, isn't it like the Tao or something?
Taoism is the.
Oh, yeah. Tao, isn't it the same thing?
Yes. Yeah, that's a murky subject because like the Tao and the Tao, it's like I don't even know which is right, actually.
We're not going down.
But we're not going to go down that road. Right no. But yeah, I honestly I don't have a hard time. Like I think that when you do exist in such a radically different state of mind, state of being, state of reality, and all the different environmental, ecological factors around you kind of reflect that, I feel as though these types of things could be possible.
I think so too. I feel like it's about this, it's about that separation. And I'm just going to bring this up again, but Tesla and the concept of the prana, because of this being it's there's more to life than what exists within the body, obviously. So like there is an energy outside the body that can be harnessed to benefit the temple, right? Like you're like to think about, like picture it this way, like when you have a near-death experience or something and people would say like I was separated from my body and I could see myself. That's what I picture for Li Ching Yuen in his meditation, where it's basically almost like you step out of the physical form and then you are performing maintenance on that physical form through meditation, and then additionally with potions, essentially, like your herbs and your special things that you have. It's like tuning up a car. It's like literally like you are doing these special little things.
Or even if you think about it, like the prana and the life force and your body is a battery that you can constantly recharge.
Right.
Yeah.
And if you can constantly recharge it, then maybe you could live to be well over the standard age, because if you can keep recharging
You know what's interesting too that I just kind of thought about? You know how like Lee, like he died in 1927, I believe, or 1933. I can't remember. 1933. Because he visited that general Yansen in 27.
Yeah.
But I'm just trying to think, like, China was going through a lot of changes. Like Li lived through the Qing dynasty in 1913 or 18 or 17, something like that. Within that decade, that was when China, the dynastic period of China ended. It became a republic.
Right.
For Li, I feel like that might have been a really big sort of metaphysical change in his world. You know what I mean?
A stressor.
Well, that, and it's almost like it's almost as if maybe his era sort of had come to a finish.
Right. And that's when he passed away. Shortly thereafter.
Maybe he's sitting up at the top of Snow Mountain, though, watching us and doing his meditation and just being like...
If I was to throw one crazy theory into this, though, I mean, unless you count them all as being crazy, because the guy potentially lived to be 256, but the idea that maybe he wasn't entirely human. That he was...
He's a demigod.
Nowadays, 7 feet tall is super average, but back then it wasn't. Maybe he came from a lineage of something that was
like a Chinese Hercules.
He's a giant of some kind or something, right? Yes. Like he has maybe some sort of almost like a demigod of some kind.
Half god, half man.
And not so much God in the sense like of that separation, God and man. Like again, this is so hard to work outside of these like frameworks that we're within, right? Just to think like we say the word demigod and it's automatically like, oh well, he's being compared to Hercules. It's like, well, no, but
in a certain regard,
that he was somewhere between
Hercules had
mortal and
extreme
immortal.
Strength, this guy had extreme other abilities,
right?
Extreme longevity.
Yeah. Anyway,
this is so much fun to talk about. Like I feel like I need to make some changes in my life to sort of reflect Lee's mentalities and just
time for a cleanse. As we drink beer. We're drinking beer while we're recording.
It's a beer cleanse, okay? He drank rice wine. We can drink beer.
Hey, you know what? We made this beer. We brewed it ourselves.
Yes, we did. And it's 100% gluten-free and all grain.
There you go.
I'm proud of it.
There you go. Well, I think that pretty much wraps it up, people. We want to hear what you think. Did Li live to be 256 years old? Do you think it's more likely he beat out the French lady and was only like a $1.87? Or do you think...
No, $1.97.
Or sorry, $1.97? That's very Canadian, eh? $1.97. What do you guys think? What do you guys think about any of this?
Reach out to us. Get at us on our socials. Into the Portal 1 for our Twitter.
Yep.
Obviously, Into the Portal Podcast is our Insta. And come join the forum.
Yes, on Facebook.
Yes, we're going to have some really cool stuff. I actually came across some really interesting article that I want to post in the forum later today.
Awesome.
So look forward to that. It's
Sweet.
about really creepy stairs in the forest.
Very cool.
Yes, abandoned stairs.
Oh, yeah, and that was given to you
structure.
by
Eric.
Mr. Fuentes.
Eric, yeah, shout out to you.
Yeah, thanks, buddy. Anyway, thank you so much for listening, you guys, to this episode on Eternal Life. And
until next time.
Hopefully we survive long enough till next week.
See you then.
This was a podcast from the Podfix Network. You can check out more shows like it at podfixnetwork.com.